everyone. Welcome to today's Variety Hour, Thanksgiving special, I think, for our American friends. We are, as always, delighted to see you all, and joined by six if you count Henry, but five speakers today. So we are going to have an awesome tour of a couple of different projects and some new research coming out of our team at Wild Labs. So we're going to cover a lot of different tech and a lot of different conservation stuff today. So should be a lot of fun. We are going to open with Lucy King, who's going to talk to us about human-elephant coexistence and a new toolkit her team has developed for helping communities live safely with elephants. So we're really interested to hear more about this toolkit. Lucy, do you want to take it away?
Great, thank you so much. Awesome. Well, listen, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. We're really delighted to be able to talk about our new human-elephant coexistence toolbox that we've developed at Save the Elephants. And I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my amazing colleagues, Naya Raja, Meha Kumar, and Nicola Heath, who are my co-authors, all women team that's developed this coexistence toolbox. We started during lockdown making this, and it's been over 3.5 years developing this amazing tool to help communities in Africa live with elephants. And just to give you a little background, this is where we work in Kenya. This is our main research sites. We are in Samburu Laikipia in the north and in Tsavo in the south. We have around 8,000 elephants in the north of Kenya in that Samburu Laikipia study area. And I'm mostly based down in Tsavo, in the Tsavo conservation area, which is a vast, vast area, about the size of Denmark. And we have about 16,000 elephants there. So in total, the country is about 4 times the size of England, 55 million people, but we're living with 36,000 elephants. So it's really an incredible challenge for the country. And it results in basically elephants overlapping with people, and most of our national parks are unfenced. So we have this clash of communities and this biggest of all land mammals on the planet. And of course, as you all know, this is exacerbated through human population expansion, which is extremely rapid in Kenya during its economic growth phase. And our elephant population has stabilized and is starting to slowly recover after the poaching crisis. So we're seeing a load of clashing issues. One of the main ones I work on is conflicts, elephant eating crops, but there's also a lot of really serious issues like people being killed by elephants, schools being broken into, water tanks being smashed, a load of different types of conflict going on. And our job at Save the Elephants is finding novel technology and solutions to turn conflict into coexistence. And I'm the coexistence director for Save the Elephants. I've been working for 18 years on these solutions, and we still haven't come up with one perfect solution. So what it is about looking at the variety of what you can do to live with elephants. And in Kenya, we've got a new coexistence mitigation strategy that's coming out, which is really focusing on empowering communities to be self-reliant on mitigating and managing and protecting themselves, and not having to rely on others or the state, and being self-empowered. And we believe that very strongly. So this started a lot with my research, coming up with this idea of beehive fences, using honeybees as a natural deterrent for crop raiding elephants. And we discovered that elephants are scared of bees. They will stay away from beehives. And this fence that we built around small 2 to 5 acre farms will keep elephants out. And it provides an income for the farmers at the same time, in the terms of honey, but also in crop yield production and a reduction in crop raids. And there's so many benefits of honeybees in the environment. I'm sure you're all aware of that. But this idea has turned into multiple different types of mitigation methods, stopping elephants coming in at the cheapest end of the scale. So we're trying to come up with solutions like honeys and beehive fences that farmers can manage themselves, from metal strip fences that rattle in the dark, to smelly elephant repellent made of noxious, toxic, smelly things that elephants don't like, to buzz boxes that plays our bee sound through a little infrared device that triggers as an elephant walks by, watchtowers, which of course help rangers get up high to be able to look down and see where the elephants are coming, simple tin man fences. We use non-palatable crops like chilies and sunflowers that elephants don't eat, and of course the beehive fences. So this is just one of our communities where we're trialing all these ideas, and we decided to turn it into this comprehensive manual, an actual book. It is a huge book. It's 200 pages now, but each of the sections, each of the tools can be downloaded individually. They can be shared on WhatsApp. Each of the tools is interactive, so it's got PDFs linked, it's got YouTube video links, and we'd really love to turn this into an app. So it'd be great to hear if anyone has any experience of turning really a substantial kind of encyclopedia of content into something that could be shared in a simple, cheap smartphone. We have a QR code. You're welcome to copy it, and we've translated into English Kiswahili and French, and we've got more African languages on the way next year. The guide has 7 different sections: understanding elephants, farm and boundary protection, early warning systems, how to live with elephants with farming techniques, income generating ideas, and biodiversity protection, which is mostly how to protect iconic, beautiful big trees from being knocked over by elephants, particularly key for small game reserves. And then a whole section on schools and pastoralists living with elephants. So this is what the pages look like. They're highly illustrative. They're absolutely beautiful, very technically correct, but also very engaging. And they're very easy to understand if you're not totally fluent in literature. So we showcase how literally a step-by-step guide with your checklist, and then the farmers build that method. And we've included not only published methods at work, but also ideas that our local farmers have come up with and invented themselves. And we've turned them into drawings and shown how amazing farmers are and how innovative they are. And we're really supportive of that. So this is Jonas Markima, whose method has made it into the toolbox. He's absolutely thrilled. And then there's a whole section on elephant wear behavior. I mean, there's 200 pages. I encourage you to download it. We're so proud of the illustrations. Nicola Heath, the most amazing illustrator, very talented. And now our job is doing things like this. So sharing it across the world, sharing it particularly through our Elephant Crisis Fund, which is our outreach arm of Save the Elephants, supporting projects across the whole of Africa, taking it to the leaders. So we're taking it to rangers, NGOs, project partners, chiefs, and getting them to help share it with their communities. And so the translations are helping. We're also doing a trainer of trainer workshops in Savo, where our team, who's brilliant and experienced at this now, brings in 20 or 30 real talented leaders, and we ask them to then train people in their community. So we've got hundreds of these community members coming in and leaders, and we're hoping to do one every month next year. So very specifically for East Africa, but hopefully we can do it for more countries. And so, yeah, demonstrating all the different sites on site, giving everyone a toolbox at the end. And very important for us is really trying to engage women, both as the trainers and also in the methods that we've come up with for how to live with elephants. So we need strong, powerful women who are able to take this toolbox and then translate it into their communities. So many of the methods we're sharing are appropriate for women, whether it's beekeeping, of course, honey production, all the way through to basket weaving, these alternative livelihoods ideas. There's so many options in here, different types of crops that they can grow, which are non-palatable to stop elephants crop raiding. And we really believe that focusing this on and sharing this with women is going to be a real multiplier effect for our project. And it's just the right thing to do, to give them a helping hand, because so often they're the ones in the field suffering from the effects of climate change, the effects of human-elephant conflict. And if we can just give them the tools to help themselves, that's going to be a huge step up for us. So we'd be really thrilled for you all to download the toolbox. If any of you have any suggestions on how we can turn this quite monster document and amazing resource of beautiful illustrations into an app, we'd be really interested to talk to you. I think it's something that we want to be able to share on a real local level with simple smartphones. And so that's the kind of plea to you to, first of all, share it, but also just to get in touch with me if you've got any ideas to take us to the next level. So open to any questions, and please email me if you have anything specific, which will be easier. Okay, many thanks.
Lizzie, that was such a quick but amazing presentation of and tour of human elephant coexistence and the sort of tools and work that you're developing. I think your call to action is pretty clear, that the technology support that you need is turning it into something accessible over smartphone, and we'll post it on Wild Labs and open it up to our community there. But I was wondering, this is kind of an obvious question before I hand it over to the next speaker, but it sounds like technology is not a key solution to human-elephant conflict. It's actually a means for disseminating information and best techniques, but it's actually not directly, you haven't found it as useful directly applied. Is that true?
But actually, technology is super important. The reality is that a lot of technology requires batteries and power. So it's about finding the right moment to use technology. So, for example, the BuzzBox, which has been developed by Wild Survivors, an NGO that has taken our sound of the BuzzBox and turned it into a solar-powered $100 unit that you just screw onto the top of a post, and if an elephant walks past, it blasts it with bees. So it's that combination of understanding the natural environmental behavior of elephants and how they react to a negative threat, and then taking a simple technology like a simple solar panel with a small sound speaker. I mean, it's just brilliant. And so that's an example of an actual technology. And then, everything from sharing things. So even using radio programs, we've started to do that in Kenya to share the information about this through Swahili shows. That's also technology. But at the end of the day, what we need is mitigation methods used in the farms, which are super low cost, that don't run out of battery when the sun goes in, and something that the farmers can feel empowered about. And that's why we love my beehive fence ideas, because bees, of course, are a natural defender, and they don't need any kind of fuel apart from a clean environment and some peace and quiet and some beautiful flowers and rain, of course. So climate change is our biggest threat for that project. But yeah, happy to chat about more on email if anyone wants to ask me any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lucy. Okay, I'm passing over to, I'm going to direct you into the chat. There's some comments coming through, and I'm going to pass over to our next speaker. Who did I actually say was next? I said Ben was next. Great. Ben, you're going to talk to us about benchmarking behavior classification of biolog data. And I'm interested to hear more about this. So take it away.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for the invitation to speak. So about me, I work for an organization called Earth Species Project. So this is an organization we're interested in applying machine learning methods to better understand animal behavior and animal communication. So we work on a variety of projects under this umbrella, mostly in the audio domain. So we have techniques for fine-grained sound event detection, foundation models for bioacoustics, benchmark data sets for bioacoustics tasks. And then what I'm going to talk about today is a bit different. It regards more about animal behavior and motion. So we're thinking about biologgers, which are these miniature tags mounted on animals. They can record a suite of motion, audio, video, environmental, and geospatial data. So here's a picture of a tag on the back of a minke whale from one of our collaborators, and on the tail of a carrion crow from a different collaborator. And here's one of those crow tags. It's very small. And today I'm mostly going to just be focused on motion data. So folks like to use machine learning as a tool for data analysis. So here's some biologger data, and you can see that it's kind of mysterious when you look at it. You can't just read off what is happening. So the desire is to take a machine learning model, which you can, if you can observe some tagged animals and understand what their behaviors are and score your recordings with those behaviors, then you can take those annotations and train a machine learning model to tell you what's happening in the recorded biologger data that you can then apply to recordings where you're not able to observe the animal. And then hopefully you can take these behavioral labels and use them to answer a scientific question, such as how does an individual's activity budget vary with human disturbance? So we were interested in knowing what patterns hold for these methods applied to biologger data at kind of a zoomed out level. So across study systems, sensor types, sampling rates, ethogram definitions, etc. And to do this, we built what's called BEBE, or the Biologger Ethogram Benchmark. So this includes 9 data sets with behavior annotations coming from these 9 species pictured on the right. We formalized this task definition, this task of what it means to classify behavior in biologger data. We've provided a set of evaluation metrics to measure how good a model is at predicting behavior in these data. And then we've made all of this publicly available, the data sets and code for others to build off of. So we found a few patterns, and I'll talk about a couple of them today. The first one I'll summarize as learned features beat hand-chosen features. So what I mean by this, hand-chosen features, this is sort of the typical workflow is you will take your biologger data and you will compute some summary statistics like overall dynamic body acceleration, which will then feed into a classical machine learning model like a random forest, which you can then train to predict behaviors. And that's contrasted with learned features, which I essentially mean neural networks. So the idea here is you take your raw data, you feed it into your neural network, which then learns to represent the data in a way that's useful for making these behavior predictions. So this is a results table. Brighter colors are better. So we have the 9 data sets that we tested on. And here's a set of different models that we tested. And these top 3 are neural networks, and the bottom 6 are these hand-chosen features fed into classical models. So looking at the top 2 in particular, we see that these neural networks where they're able to learn the features directly from the data generally perform better, kind of across the board. So this is a bit in contrast to more typical workflows that people are using these days for analyzing this type of data. The second thing that I wanted to describe is, so representation learning enables low data applications. So what I mean by this, low data, for this, we're looking at a situation where we have a small amount of labeled training data, which is really relevant for this field because you can imagine observing an animal that's tagged and scoring their behavior to that biologger data is difficult. So having the ability to train a model with a low amount of data is desirable. So representation learning, what we did here, there was a team at Oxford who took data from human wristwatches. They had, I think, 600,000 hours of data recorded at 30 hertz. And they took the data and they would apply different manipulations to it. So they would reverse time, permute the channels, time warp it. And they had a neural network that was supposed to predict which of these manipulations had been performed. And by doing that, the neural network was able to learn a good way to represent the data that was useful for performing this task. And it turns out that this way of representing the data is actually useful for performing our task, which is predicting behaviors in accelerometry data from animals. So we took these representations from these humans and we fine-tuned it on these 9 different data sets. And we found essentially across the board that this technique of first training on human wristwatch data at 30 hertz and then forgetting about the fact that sampling rate is a thing, or forgetting the fact that this data was from humans originally, we were able to fine-tune and get the best performance. So I think this is kind of a proof of concept for how you might approach low data situations in the future. And I think it's kind of surprising and fun because, using human data might not be at first obvious, and using data at a different sampling rate might not be at first obvious. So a call out to the community. We'd like to work with more people who have biologger data, essentially with more data sets where you have more ability to find patterns of what's true for what happens when we apply these methods across different settings. And then also, if you have a biologger data set that you'd like to apply some machine learning to, we're happy to help. We work with biologists who have data sets that they want to understand better. So yeah, you can reach out, and this is my email. So I should mention that the data and code from this are publicly available. This is our GitHub. And these results are included. We have a preprint. We're undergoing some revisions currently. So the first draft is on archive. And yeah, finally, just a shout out to Maddie Cusimano, who is my lead co-author on this and did as much work as I did. Yeah, so feel free to reach out, and thank you.
Okay, you answered that. Thank you. That was awesome. Ben, you answered my 2 questions I was going to ask in your last 2 slides, which was one, where is the data, the GitHub page, because I couldn't find it on your website. So there it is. And the other thing was, how can people help? But I wonder if there's like data you're really keen to hear from specifically, like types of biologger data or places that you're particularly keen to hear from, or you just in general want anyone to get in touch if they're interested in working with you?
I think in general, we're really interested, thinking about animal communication. We're kind of coming at this. Originally, we wanted to include more modalities like audio and video to understand how these things interact. And it turns out that this type of data is very complicated, so it made sense to just start with one modality.
Yeah.
So if you have multimodal data, that's awesome. But also if you have just accelerometer data, that would also be awesome, especially from birds.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Ben. I'm going to hand over to Casey now, who's taking us to Virunga and to talk through a really cool tool that you've developed for dealing with giant drone data sets, right? Do you want to take it away?
Yeah. So, hi everyone. My name's Casey. I'm an engineer at Virunga National Park, and I'm a software developer. And I'm going to tell you about how we do drone mapping in the park and a tool I built called Simple Drone Maps to help us make use of all of our imagery. So, a little overview: Virunga is located in the eastern DRC. Home to about a third of the world's mountain gorillas. There's also about 80,000 people living within the park, and many more within just a day's walk of the park. So there's a lot of pressure on the resources and the land itself within the park. We have a lot of issues with agricultural encroachment and deforestation and overfishing. So we need ways to monitor these really big landscapes, to monitor some of these threats. So this led us about a year ago to use drones as a way to collect really high resolution imagery of large areas of the park. And this helps us in a number of different ways. One is more an operational side of things, helping us plan patrols and helping us coordinate patrols while rangers are out in the field. If we have really high resolution imagery, we know just a lot more about the terrain in which our staff is working, so that's helpful. The next is as a land use analysis tool. So using high resolution satellite imagery or high resolution imagery to monitor some of those threats that I mentioned, like agricultural encroachment. But also outside of the park, we want to understand more about how people are farming, what they're farming, so that we can kind of target different programs more effectively. And last is kind of a more experimental use case for this imagery, but we're looking into ways to monitor invasive plants and possibly some large wildlife like hippos or buffalo. And then, as you can see in this image here, we could also use our images to like monitor boats on the lake. And so the reason for using drone maps in the first place is that the off-the-shelf base maps that you'd find in Google Maps or something like that are insufficient for most of these use cases. And that's because they're often really out of date. They're very high resolution, but they might be a few years old. So we need something more current. The other alternative to using drones is to purchase satellite imagery, but that can be really expensive, especially over really large areas. So for our drone monitoring program specifically, we have some of these requirements. We need to map most of the park annually. It's a really large area, so we have to think about how to get some extra range out of our drone. We also want to be able to use the equipment that we use for mapping in other uses as well. Like if we buy a drone, we want to use it for mapping, but also for surveillance for rangers and stuff like that. So yeah, and once we have a map, we want to be able to distribute it easily to different members of our team, from the research department to security, and even to infrastructure. And we also want to be able to integrate these base maps into other tools that we're using, like GIS software, or mobile apps that our rangers take out into the field, or Earth Ranger as well. And then we want to be able to do this on site, so we don't have any kind of internet issues. So I'm going to focus mainly on the software for this talk, but just to give you an overview of the hardware we're using all off-the-shelf drone equipment. It's on the higher end of things. And you can see here we have a drone strapped to a light aircraft, and this is kind of gets into what I mean by like multi-use equipment. So rather than purchasing like a dedicated aircraft base, mapping solution, we used a conventional drone that we can use on the aircraft with just some zip ties, or we can use it as a regular drone. And it just gives us a lot more flexibility in that way. The other thing is we have a very powerful server at one of our patrol posts where we do all of the processing. So yeah, I'm mainly going to focus on the software. So once we come back from a flight, we have a bunch of raw images, and you need software that's going to stitch all of those images together and assign coordinates to each pixel. So we use Pix4D Mapper for that. And then once we have that image, this is where the tool I built comes in, called Simple Drone Maps. So we build our map, and then we find a way to upload it, usually just like queue an upload overnight. So we get that onto Simple Drone Maps, and this serves as kind of like a hub where we can easily integrate our base maps into other tools like QGIS and Mapbox. So yeah, these are the tools that we would use to actually do some analysis or view from a mobile app. So yeah, to get into a bit more about Simple Drone Maps, it's an aerial image web platform. You can upload your large GeoTIFF files, and what the system does is process it and creates a web efficient version that you can easily load on the web. So you can take this, in this case, a 30 gigabyte GeoTIFF file and load it on the web in just a few seconds. And what happens is as you zoom in, it starts to load a higher resolution image of that specific area. So you don't load the entire data set at once. And soon you'll be able to add notes and different types of annotations, and you can already measure things and download the original files if you want to. And importantly for us, you can share these really easily with others just by sending a link. Also for us, it's easy to integrate into our mobile app that rangers take out with them. So you can see on the bottom, it's a drone image, and on the top is like a conventional base map. So it provides us a lot more kind of granularity. So yeah, thanks for listening. My call to action is to visit simpledronemaps.com and test it out, and let me know what you think. So yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Casey. I've dropped a link to simpledronemaps.com in the chat so people can access it pretty easily. So you've got a pretty cool... Is there anything in particular you just want feedback from people, or is there anything else that you would like?
Yeah, I just kind of want to know how people are using some of these aerial images and some of the challenges they currently face making use of them.
Okay, cool. I'm really happy. Thank you for joining us. It was really Casey and I met up at Earth Ranger a couple of weeks ago, and this is one of the tools he was telling me about, and it just sounded like such a useful piece of software for anyone using drones. So I'm really happy that you were able to pop on and tell us about it so quickly. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, we're up to intermission. Henry, we are handing over to you as our new quizmaster.
Okay, can everyone see a bit of a spoiler about what this is going to be about? But can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, we can. No one saw the spoiler. It was fun. It was totally
No
fun.
one saw the spoiler. Okay, well, I'm about to spoil it anyway. So yeah, I'm Henry from the Wild Labs team. I'm here to break up the action of this variety hour. We already learned about loads of amazing bits of tech, and I was really happy to see that drones were going to be on the agenda because I already had the idea for a drone-based quiz. So get ready to, following up on Casey's presentation, to just learn some random facts about drones. And I'm actually inclined to say that Casey's not allowed to participate because he's probably at an advantage. But Casey, you join in. It's going to be absolutely fine.
I feel like, Casey, you can be our dark horse throwing in possibly correct answers or possibly wrong answers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or if you can make them wrong, that'd be hilarious. Sorry, Steph, go on.
No, I was just going to say, everyone, as always, just participate in the chat and I will be your voice, I reckon. Yeah? Henry?
Yes.
I don't know what's happening in this quiz.
That sounds good. I'll try and monitor the chat, but yeah, Steph, feel free to shout out.
Right.
I've also been told that any good quizmaster at Wild Labs has to have their own signature sound effect. So I've been scouring for good sound effects. my favorite animal in the whole world is the spotted hyena. I used to work with them and track them with radio collars and stuff, and that's one of my sort of areas of tech background. So I thought, what better than to start with a lovely hyena whoop. So I hope everyone can hear that. Probably unbearably loud, but anyway, moving swiftly onwards. Okay, so that's the initiation of the quiz. So whenever you hear a hyena-based noise, that means the quiz is coming. So please write down your answers in the chat, and Steph is going to read them out. But the first one is extremely easy. What does UAV stand for?
We're hearing unmanned aerial vehicle from unpersoned aerial vehicle. Unmanned. Yes, we love this, Lars. Unmanned. Yep. Okay. I feel like we've all correctly answered it. Casey, I'm disappointed you didn't.
Yeah. Casey, can you confirm what the answer is?
Yeah, I mean unmanned aerial vehicle, but like maybe there's.
Yes, yeah, that's right. That's exactly what I've got. It was not a trick question. We start easy and then the difficulty ramps up. So, question 2. When were drones invented? Roughly, you know, I'll take like a 10-year sort of either side. And what were they used for originally?
Oh, what were they used for originally?
That's the question.
1914, 2000 army.
defense.
Okay.
Ooh.
18th century warfare, 1920 aerial photos.
Of 18th century warfare as an answer. Well, the answer I've got, which may not, I think it could be 18th century, but I have actually got in 1917. So they were originally invented. Technically, the first drone was tested and then deployed in 1917 in World War I, and it was used for surveillance by the military, so the US and the UK militaries, which I didn't know. I thought they'd be invented in like the 60s or something. So I think that's pretty exciting.
Wait. I was going to ask if we had a photo of that, but no.
Unfortunately not. But yeah, people, please look it up.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Okay. Question 3, and this is a multiple choice answer. So drones are legally not allowed to fly above, and I'm sorry for the use of meters, 100 meters, 115 meters, 120 meters, or 130 meters. What is the legal limit for drones? Well, which drones cannot fly above?
Legal limit as per which jurisdiction, which is the challenge with drones?
I was under the impression that this was like an international agreement, so apologies if I could be.
No, okay, I don't know anything. So I'm learning stuff as well. So 100, 120 from Thomas, 120 as per US. In the US, per FAA rules, 400 feet. Don't know what that is in meters. If someone can convert, that would be great. 120, 115, depends on the country. 115, depends on the country.
Okay, excellent. Well, the answer that we've pretty much got them all there, right? But the answer that I've come up with is 120 meters, which I believe is like 400 and something feet. So whoever got that, give yourself a pat on the back.
Everyone's agreeing probably 120 in most places, but in Greenland, it is 100 meters.
Oh, really? Oh, I'd like to know why Greenland is slightly lower, but anyway, I assume they'd have less air traffic, but I could be wrong. Maybe there's loads of planes flying around Greenland. Okay. Question 4. What's the max weight that a drone can carry? And I did research this, and I was like, what is the heaviest weight a drone has ever carried? So, but anyone, please correct me if they think the answer is wrong, but it was at 20 kilos, 120 kilos, 220 kilos, or 250 kilos?
Lars, it all depends. Of course, it all depends. But like, play along. So 700 kilos. Kim has answered 700 kilos and 250 kilos. So I'm guessing. Thomas says 25 kilos.
It's that range.
20 kilos from Vivek. 250 kilograms if we consider unmanned taxis. Oh yeah.
Okay. Are we ready for the answer?
Yeah.
The answer that I've got is 220 kilos. Is apparently. I can't remember, but please look it up. It's a very technical drone name, and this may be just ones that are available to civilians, but
no, I meant in what was the 220 kilos? Was it like 2 people or?
Oh no, I have not. I assume they were like testing it, but maybe it was like a small hippo or something. I don't know. 5. What is the max speed that a drone can reach?
What are we talking, like a fixed wing or like a rotator?
We are talking whatever Google believes to be a drone.
Okay. Kim says 120.345 kilometers per hour. Thank you for doing the conversion.
Ooh. Thank you for doing the conversion. So these are your options: 100, 230, 290, or 310 miles an hour. Apologies for not having the conversion. Very British.
310 at least. 100 from Kim, 230 from Ram. Fanni is 230. I reckon, I don't know, 230 maybe?
Okay, well, the answer that I've got is 230.
Okay.
There you go. That's what I got. Well done. So whoever got 230, again, please pat yourselves on the back. And if you have any complaints about the right answers, please send them to me after the show. Casey, I'm looking at you.
Wade has just dropped a link to a table of drone altitude limits for various countries. So we are getting valuable information being shared in the chat as a result of your question. So I love it. Here for
the quiz is going to improve every single week. So, it's all based on feedback. So excellent. Well, okay. Well, I just wanted to say before I move on to the next segment, or before we move on to the next segment, well done everyone that scored highly on the quiz. I just wanted to finish off by saying thanks to all of you, and to remind you that just by being here and showing interest and engagement with the programs that we put on, sharing with your colleagues and others who may be interested, you are supporting us. But if you wanted to support us more directly and to help us to continue putting on programs like Variety Hour or our other work, such as our programs in East Africa, which you can see photographed in the background there, then you can please consider giving us a one-off donation. Any amount is welcome. And in other very exciting news, we've also just set up a Patreon. So if you don't know what a Patreon is, it allows you to provide us with a regular monthly donation, again, to help us keep the lights on. As you can see, Steph's lights have already gone out, so the need is urgent. And also it allows us to do the work that we do. We've only just set this up, so but we're going to be exploring perks for patrons in the future as well. So if you're interested in becoming our first patron supporter, then please click the link in the chat below. And I think Jake is going to put those there for us.
Yeah, it's good.
But thank you very much.
Nice.
On to the next segment.
I love we're still getting links to drone facts, and the fastest, Devon's just shared something that's the fastest unmanned aircraft on Earth. Anyway, yes, thank you so much, Henry. Great quiz. That was, it felt almost Christmassy. And yes, right. We're on to our final talk. Fanni and Talia are going to be talking about the state of conservation technology. We are so excited about, I personally, I can't speak for our whole, I think I can speak for our whole team, but I know Talia and I for many, many years have had this vision of turning our annual survey data into a multi-year report and giving you guys access to the data that we're collecting from, that you're helping us collect. So that we can track trends in how our sector is changing. And this report is the first time we've been able to do that, and is hopefully the start of us being able to do it for many years to come. So we're really excited to share these results, but I will hand over to Fanni and Talia to talk through what they are. Take it away, guys.
Thank you, Steph. Fanni and I are very excited to share this info with you. So some of you, as Steph mentioned, may have seen that we just released our latest State of Conservation Tech Report. This one is very special because it's the first time that we've been able to look at trends in the data over time, with 3 years on the State of Conservation Technology questions. So I'm going to hand it over in a minute to Fanni, who interned with us at Wild Labs, hosted by our partner organization WWF over the summer. And she did an amazing job doing all the analyses, building the report. So massive credit to her. But just to give you just a little bit of context before I do that. So Wild Labs, we've been serving our Wild Labs community for, I think, since 2016, Steph, is that right? Since very early on in our community history.
Well, given we launched in November 2015, yes, 2016.
Yes, since 2016. So since our launch, we've been really prioritizing and wanting to understand how all of you are experiencing Wild Labs, what's working for you, what's not, what you're thinking about and working on, and how we can better support. So initially, this research was really just an internal community survey to understand those things. In 2020, that we ended up publishing in 2021, we evolved this into a more formal survey tool where we could reach not only the Wild Labs community, but also folks engaging with monitoring and conservation technologies all over the world. And we did that through our partners at Colorado State University. And then this year, as I mentioned, for the first time, we've been able to look at 3 years of that data where we're actually asking questions, not just about Wild Labs, but about the broader sector and how things are evolving over time, and measuring like usage in technology engagement and opportunities and challenges across the sector. So we're very excited to do that. I also just wanted to flag that we did separate out, some of you may have noticed if you've gone into this year's survey, that the Wild Labs questions are no longer in there. So now Wild Labs is going to have our own separate community survey that you can look out for later. And then just a final note in terms of context, that we have gotten so much positive feedback about how useful these reports are from our community since this initial research came out in 2021. And we've already seen a lot of evidence of the results being used for basically to support the community's work, from big NSF and private sector funding proposals to small student grants and projects. And the only way that we can continue to do this research is by all of you taking your time and sharing your thoughts on the survey. So we will drop in the link to this year's survey that's open now as well. But just a huge thank you to all of you for making this possible. And yeah, to flag that we would love to hear from you again on this year's survey as well. So with that, I will hand it over to Fanni to talk through this year's results.
Thank you, Talia. Sorry, I had to look for the floating thingy to
Okay.
stuff. So before getting into the results themselves, I wanted to very briefly go over who did we hear from across the years. So we received over 600 responses that could be analyzed over the last 3 years. And we see kind of an even split across the years. And we also see that usually more than half of the people who fill out the survey are Wild Labs members. This was not the case in 2022, but we can see that the community is quite engaged over the years. When we looked at the gender balance, we could also see that it has been mostly stable across the year, not many changes. But where we did see some changes, and it was quite exciting to see, is the geographical coverage has been expanded over the years. So on this map, you can see with a light blue the countries that first appeared in 2020 in the survey, and with the darker shades, countries that popped up in 2021 or 2022. And this clearly shows that our respondents have been changing over the years, and overall the survey covers more countries or more varied countries in 2022 than it did in 2020. Kind of staying with this message, we also looked at just like the number of countries per region or per continent, and we can kind of see that it's a more balanced split in 2022 than it was in 2020. Europe and North America is still highly represented, but the share of other regions or continents have been increasing, which is great to see, because it's a more varied voice that we can talk about. And finally, we also looked at the organization of the respondents, and we can see that most people who fill in the survey are either from tech companies, universities or research institutes, or conservation NGOs. And we have a relatively even split between these three. And we've also seen a couple of people fill it in who are from other areas. Most notably, government agencies seems to have been increasing over the years. So with that in mind, I wanted to share the top findings with you. First of all, we asked people about what technologies they are using, and we are monitoring the shifts across the years. And kind of high-level takeaways that we haven't really seen major shifts. Camera traps, GIS, and remote sensing are the two most popular technologies people are utilizing. But we've also seen a couple of tools where we see that they are being used more and their popularity is increasing. Most notably, AI tools and data management and processing platforms are two areas where we've seen a higher share of respondents indicating that they are using these technologies. And also a little bit about biologgers and network sensors, we've seen the same. We also wanted to understand where people see technologies currently performing well, but also what technologies have a high potential in the future. And GIS and remote sensing, which was also one of the most frequently used technologies, came on top of the current performance list in both 2020 and 2022. But we wanted to focus on where people see impact for the future. And AI tools, eDNA and genomics, and network sensors were three areas where people both identified that current performance might not be what they want it to be, but they see and they feel that the potential impact in the future could be huge. Interestingly, this is a little bit different in 2022 than it was in 2020. AI tools and network sensors are still perceived as potentially highly impactful in the future, but eDNA and genomics drop back from the 2nd place to the 10th place. This might just be 2022 not being a good year for these technologies, but this might be explained by it being a hype technology and kind of this technology hype cycle shifted over. And while in 2020, it seemed like this was a promising technology, by 2022, it seemed like maybe not as much as some people anticipated it. Interestingly, biologgers replaced it in the top 3, even though its current performance is already rated relatively well. So beyond technologies people are working with, we also wanted to understand what are the sector-wide challenges people are facing on a day-to-day basis. And when looking at any of the last 3 years, funding competition came back by far the most serious challenge people identified, next to matching technology to conservation and application of efforts. But the rate how much more funding competition is identified as an issue, it's been increasing. So it seems like it's even more of an issue compared to other challenges than the number 2 and number 3 in 2022 at least. We also wanted to understand what were the challenges within conservation issues that people mostly focused on, and we found that this hasn't been changing. The number 1 is biodiversity monitoring, followed by species protection and protected area management and planning. Zooming in on some specific user groups, we were really interested in seeing what constraints and what they are struggling with. We also asked end users of conservation technology, what are the main constraints that they are facing? And this is a snapshot of 2022, where we saw that upfront costs were the number 1 issue and accessing local suppliers were number 2. Upfront cost actually has been number 1 in each year. It seems like this is a prevalent issue that people are facing over time, but accessing local suppliers is something that hasn't been a prominent constraint in 2020 or 2021. So it seems like this constraint and also time required to engage has been more on people's minds in 2022 than before. On the other hand, technical skills seems to be less of a constraint because it used to be number 2 and now it's only number 5 when people had to rank these constraints. We also wanted to understand what developers were thinking and what were they constrained by. And again, here's a snapshot of 2022, but here we've seen less changes than for end users. So for number 1 and number 2, we've seen continued funding and seed funding come back as the top constraints in each year. And engineering challenges and lack of standards have been recurrent in the top 5 each year. Supply chain issues is something relatively new. And the thing that it replaced is understanding the landscape, which actually used to be the 2nd most pressing constraint in 2020, but now it's not even in the top 5. We also wanted to zoom in and see if there were any groups or group of people who were more likely to struggle with some of these constraints. And we found that for end users, being in a developing country led to being more likely to struggle with a couple of these constraints, most notably maintenance costs, accessing training, mentoring, and advice, accessing local tech suppliers, and upfront costs were some areas where we've seen a statistically significant relationship between being in a developing country and identifying these as constraints. When we looked at developers, in addition to location, which also came up as a significant differentiator, But we've seen that women were more likely to struggle with a couple of areas as well, most notably accessing relevant data, overcoming user concerns about data security, securing continued funding, and testing and accessing testing sites were all areas where female respondents indicated that it seemed like they were just more likely to struggle with these constraints than others. And finally, we also wanted to understand whether WILDLABS had a measurable impact on participants' opinions. And we found that active WILDLABS members were actually 1.5 times less likely to struggle with some of these conservation tech challenges, including accessing relevant training, accessing mentoring and advice, and matching technological expertise to conservation challenges, which is probably not surprising, but I guess it's still nice to hear. Finally, to kind of close up on a positive note, we also ask people if they are becoming more optimistic, and we've seen that over the years, people have become more optimistic about the state of the conservation field, which was great to hear. And we also wanted to see what were the best ways to optimize technology for conservation and what are the areas people are optimistic about or interested in. And we found that collaboration and information sharing was the number one, followed by accessible user-friendly tools and the interoperability of tools and data. So these were the results. I hope you found them interesting. And just echoing Talia in hopefully, if you can take a few minutes, we would love to hear your opinion, and we would love to see what you think in the 2023 State of Conservation Tech Survey. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Thanks, guys. How have we finished 5 minutes early? I don't quite understand. I thought we were going to have like heaps of time. Anyway, sorry, I've gotten distracted by the time. Talia and Fanni, I would love to know. Great presentation. Well done on all of the work that has gone into that. I'd love to know from you guys, what was the thing that most surprised you, or the key takeaway for you?
Fanni, do you want to go first?
I can. Honestly, like one thing that was really surprising to me, like I didn't know a lot about the specific technology, so I already learned a lot about just like, oh, what is a camera trap? Because I didn't know that before the summer. But the most surprising learning for me was that people are actually becoming more optimistic, and most people are optimistic because if you're not engaged with the field, I think it's very easy to become cynical and just say like, oh, we are all gonna die, or the animals are gonna die. We're just like heading towards doom. And it's just nice to see that the people who are actually active in this field are actually becoming more optimistic, because it just, makes me more optimistic as well.
Yeah, I would say for me, it's kind of similar to how I feel every year when I read through the results of the survey, which is actually, it's not that many of the specific challenges and constraints and ideas are particularly surprising, although it's really interesting to get to see changes in trends over time, like seeing how the hype cycle is affecting how folks are using eDNA, for example, now, or the potential they see in it. But it's actually just how much they reflect trends and that everyone is experiencing and articulating such similar things. And I think we saw that in the WILDLABS survey before it evolved into State of Conservation Tech. And we see it now as well, especially looking over time. So I think it's great to be able to have a bigger and like broader scope to look at how things are shifting. But mostly, I think a lot of the purpose of this work isn't necessarily to identify really surprising things. It's to capture what we all know and put data behind it and support our community to use that to advance the field and to support their continued work.
Nice. Hey, Ram, do you have a mic? Do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I do have one.
Do you want to jump? That's an interesting question. Do you want to throw it in?
Yeah, so I don't have first-hand experience, but I believe the LLMs and the AI models have a very huge carbon footprint, starting from the fact that a generative AI prompt is 6 times that of a Google search. So it'll be only a matter of time before there's some sort of tax for using this, because the challenge is I might be sitting in a country and the Google farm might be in some other country where the actual footprint happens, right? So, and I think we need to be a little more sustainable on this front and not just go expanding all out just because these models are available. And I think it would be great if Wild Labs could do a little more research and put that out as well alongside the fact, because they are contributing to so much of technology initiatives.
So I guess the question is, how do you guys see like either this piece of research evolving, or do you think there's scope for the research that we're doing with the community to evolve to pick up some of these?
Yeah, I think the information going out is important, because like a simple thing is like people here don't like if I take the analogy of manufacturing jeans, a pair of jeans takes about 200 gallons of water. People don't realize it. And so when you say use technology, I think it's also important to provide the information that, hey, use it sustainably.
I think so. We agree. But let me throw it to Talia and Fanni. What do you guys think about our role in capturing that sort of info?
I think this is a conversation we've started to have with like crypto mining and stuff that we've had on previous Variety Hour talks. And it sounds like there are evolutions that make folks in our community. I mean, we're not the experts on this by any means. So I think there are other folks we should ask about it as well. But it sounded like people in the community thought we're moving towards more sustainable options for, at least for crypto mining and maybe just big data processing. But I think in general, there is a lot of scope to expand on this research. There are so many things that we want to ask every year. We did start doing a bit of like financial market assessment a couple of years ago, but it's just, in order to keep the scope of it within reason, I think there may need to just be complementary research efforts. And we are one idea that we're really excited about is potentially developing this into more of a tool that other folks could also use to survey different aspects of the community and different demographics, and have it be something that could be more widely spread than our small team can just handle capacity-wise at this time. So if anyone's interested to adopt the survey or work with us to figure out other areas of exploration, please let us know. We would love to explore that.
Tarun, do you want to jump in and ask your question? Oh, do you have a mic?
I do. Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
All right. No, I just wanted to understand, like, if there is an analysis, or if you guys are thinking in terms of, like, I know the computing cost for AI it grows exponentially once your use case is more scalable, but there might be areas where some of the use cases of AI may be mapped to some of the cost savings. I know funding is a big problem, but thinking of it in another direction of how to cut down costs with some of the work, has there been any analysis or thought around that aspect?
By work, do you mean like conservation projects?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of the reason why AI comes out on the top of the list of high potential technologies, because I think it already is having a massive influence on the efficiency of conservation projects. The thing, and Wild Labs is also, we're engaged with some projects that are working to kind of increase the accessibility of that space and build more training tools and capacity building programs that will make those tools more widely applicable. But I think what we hear is that it has incredible potential for increasing efficiency and cost savings, but that right now it's just not accessible to the vast majority of the applied conservation world. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to not only develop the tools and make them more effective, but also to make them usable by conservation end users.
That makes sense. And then just as a in the continuum, from the field, how it's, I know there are mechanisms to capture the data. As long as the data is collected through an automated mechanism like a camera trap or something, then there's low chances of having, for example, manual data errors, but more if it's being logged, and which is happening in a lot of developing countries or areas where it's still being manually entered into the files and getting into the spreadsheets and getting the, so there's a lot of processing that is happening. So I was thinking about, like, have you looked at it from that lens, like how much of it's manual at this point, where some of these challenges are being already addressed in conservation work, at more developed or more old conservation work that is happening since time. So
yeah, I think if I understand your question, I think a lot of the tools that are making the biggest difference in terms of like digitizing on the ground conservation data, those are like the protected area management software tools like Earth Ranger and SMART and things like that that we see even in our Women in Conservation Technology program. We kind of cover the whole gambit of tools available, and the ones that folks those are early career Kenyan and Tanzanian women, that the tools that they tend to be the most interested in and can then go directly back to their own conservancies or workplaces and adopt are those tools that help switch a team from maybe like collecting data on a piece of paper to then using these tools that can help kind of digitize the process and reduce errors there and stuff. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, in that direction too, because there are some technologies, that are, there are some small programs that have been set up using technology and using AI, where you are paying local economies and local communities to, collect that data and make, it's an economic model, and that's really scaling. So that's why I was just curious and thinking how you're thinking that direction. So nope. That helps. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to wrap us up there and say thank you to all of our fantastic speakers today. And just say that if you guys want to hang out, we'll do after hours and stop the recording. But for everyone on the recording and everyone who has to log off now, thank you so much for joining us today and for the whole year as well. This is going to be our last Variety Hour for the year. We'll see you back here again next year, and possibly we may have some other events before the end of the year, but it'll be our last Variety Hour. So a big thank you to all our speakers today, all our speakers this year, and for all of you joining and like just being the most wonderful community to be a part of. And we hope you have a wonderful holiday season, and we'll see you here fresh and bright next year. Bye, everyone.